It's now my pleasure to introduce a woman I think is probably known to a number of you in the room already, Kathryn Johnson.
It's a real honor to be in a room with so many women who are demonstrating every day their deep commitment to equity for women. In fact, I believe that your presence here today really represents the gift economy in action. And I know many of you are taking time away from very important assignments to be here, so we thank you for joining us. I have one brief objective in my opening comments, and that is to build the business case for global women's empowerment, and to do that off of some new research that I believe suggests that the timing for collective action is now. Millions of women and girls are living under a repression without the rights to equal participation. So today we're at a pivotal point in looking forward to what we can do for the many, many women around the world who do not have a seat at every table. If we begin to look at the strategic question that we asked on that last slide, and I'd like you to actually, go back to that slide a second, I'd actually like you to say this question with me right here. How do we dramatically accelerate the empowerment of women and girls? This issue is the one issue that we'll be probing very deeply today as a large-scale question, because we don't think it's being asked enough. And in my business case, I'll be trying to suggest that some people are beginning to try to answer this question. And I think our opportunity today is to see whether we can come up with a disruptive innovation that might move us in a new direction. So we've been asking a number of questions, including the fact that many say we're on the brink of a massive power shift. And that power shift is one that is seeing women gain more control. We at the Global Women's Leadership Network were asked by our grads how we could scale to meet the broader demands that they were facing when they went home. And we began to ask some very interesting questions. One of them was, what social innovation should we adopt to achieve a true breakthrough? We're in the backyard of tech giants and social innovation. What might we do that would actually take that big leap? We asked what could result in an unprecedented expansion in the pool of women leaders with the capacity to serve as change agents and drivers of change. We asked how we could achieve measurable progress on a global scale around the issue of impacting and supporting women and girls. And most importantly, we said, could we accelerate the velocity with which this movement was occurring? We began to look at the return on investment, a modest investment, and we were reminded that every day we're spending $1 billion a day in Iraq and Afghanistan. Imagine what we could do with a mere $10 million to address this issue. The magnitude of the problem versus the resources that are being dedicated to it, they're minuscule. So our conclusion is quite simply this. There are a myriad of organizations, many of them in this room, proliferating around the globe that are dedicated to empowering women and girls. It's not a matter of the number of organizations. Many of them are doing extremely admirable work and achieving very positive results. Yet these efforts lack the scale and scope needed to drive large-scale system change. They're disconnected and missing critical leverage points. We asked the question, what would it take to impact 100 million women, 1 billion women and girls? Because that's the size of the scope of the problem we're facing. To date, we have found no other organization that has unlocked this exponential ability. If you find them, let us know. We'd love to work with them. But it's actually thinking on that scale that is most attractive to us. So our session today is about co-designing a future together. And when we began this process, we were honored to begin working with Heather and her terrific work, and with FSG around collective impact. And joining us later this morning will be Rebecca Weisberg, and we're privileged to have both of these leaders, thought leaders, right in our backyard, so thank you. We can actually bridge this gender gap, and I don't think we're alone in believing that. The new offices on women that have been created in the last 5 years at the UN, the State Department, the World Bank, the EU, and the Department of Defense are further validation of the interest in actually addressing issues affecting women. Yet the size and scope of the obstacles facing women and girls around the world are immense, and we only have today a set of new tools in the digital age that can actually allow us to think about these problems in the magnitude and scale with which we're going to do that today. We've also been exploring the use of big data, mapping, and other tools that could scale the issue. And we explored open source education, which many of you are involved with, virtual mentoring, and research that suggests, I love this research point, that networks are more important as predictors of women's success than academic attainment. That without networks, women are not as successful in the business world. And then we're all too familiar with the research around the role of women on boards and in senior management, that those are high performing organizations. And then finally, we're very intrigued by the new research around what is called reputational collateral. How do we actually allow women to be in a position where they can use their reputation as a way to gain currency in the marketplace? So as Maddie Dykewald reveals in her book, Influence, the issue of gender fairness began as a feminist issue in the 70s. It moved to a social justice issue in the 80s and 90s. But today, through new insight of what's gone on in the developing world over the last 30 years, empowering women and girls has become a matter of national and global security. Why? Because when women and girls are denied access to equal opportunities, those countries are falling farther and farther behind and becoming the most unstable and violent regimes in the world. Simultaneously, countries like Brazil and Chile have made shifts in gender equity policies and access to education a right, and they have made extraordinary political, social, and economic progress, and now have 2 women presidents, and I love that in Chile today, 2 women are vying for the highest spot. So that means that global security today has become an issue directly correlated with global women's empowerment. The key to all of this is collaboration. We know that social change relies on participatory engagement. We know that it's built on communities of practice, and we know that cultures of collaboration are beginning to emerge, much as they have with the co-conveners and the groups that are part of our conversation today.